Hello and welcome back to another speed build. This is part 2 in my 3-part build series, building a rustic family home. Very first speed build series ever, very first video ever on my channel. We've jumped straight into the living room here. I actually had a bit of a mess up when recording this when I was building it initially, with missing out on a bunch of stuff that I was recording because of who I am as a person. So you missed a sort of a bit there, but mostly it was just trying to choose a wallpaper and fixing the layout and stuff like that. So you didn't miss much. Just going through here, I actually originally wanted to use the wallpaper that came with paranormal stuff, but it felt a bit too busy. I decided to go with this one. I think it was from Cats and Dogs instead. It kind of had a bit more of a rustic vibe to it, and I think it suited the home a little bit better. I've used the floors inside. I think they were from Get Famous. I didn't use the same ones that I used on the exterior from Jungle Adventures. I felt like these were a bit more suited to an indoor space. And here I'm just trying to figure out what I wanted to do in terms of colour and layout of the living space. I really loved the yellow chairs, but it felt a little bit too bright, a little bit too in your face, so I decided to go with a more muted blue that sort of matches the colour of the couch but isn't exactly the same. The idea was that I wanted it to be like, oh okay, they've come in, they've refurbished this home a little bit, they've freshened up the wallpaper, they've kept the original floors, but freshened up the walls. They bought a new couch, but they've used old chairs that they have. But it all matches and it works together regardless. Sort of building on that eclectic vibe I said I wanted to go with in the last video. So I'm just going through and trying to figure out what sort of items I felt would suit the home. Some new, some old, but all working together harmoniously. I really loved this rug. It kind of felt like it matched. In terms of colour, it's kind of a bit busy, but I think it works. I think it works nicely, even though there's sort of a mix of patterns and colours. I think it all blends well together. I loved the idea that I used the fireplace as a focal point, which actually I ended up changing out to a different one a little bit later from Eco Lifestyle. I really loved this one, but I think the Eco one worked a bit better, but we'll touch on that later. But using a side table, like a bedside table, and popping just a little TV in the corner kind of says, this isn't their focus. I spent a while here trying to figure out what curtains I wanted to go with. Again, trying to go with that whole, they've refurbished the house, but they couldn't afford to do everything at once. So I stayed with these blinds from Snowy Escape. They felt old, and I really loved that. They didn't feel new and crisp and clean. I liked the fact that it felt like, oh, well, they couldn't afford to update the window dressings right now, so they've stayed with these old rustic blinds that came with the place, but the wallpaper's refreshed, and the floors, even though they're original, they look nice, and they have a new sofa to sit on, which is really good, and they've replaced the fireplace, and that looks really good, and they're just doing it bit by bit. They're working with what they have. And I think it came along really well. I'm really happy with how this living room turned out. Really cluttered, but like homey and friendly and cozy to live in, I think. So yeah, I'm really happy with how it came along. Little desk in that nook there. I did think of putting a window seat there, but it didn't really fit nicely. And I thought maybe a desk would be more appropriate for that space there. Took me a little bit to decide what paintings I wanted here above the stairs. I wanted it to feel like a family home, like they've done a wall mural of family pictures, but I wasn't happy with that. I ended up going with a set of stacked paintings. I think they're from Cats and Dogs. No, Dine Out. From Dine Out, and I think that worked, sort of like a wall mural. And this here, rather than doing a desk with a computer, I decided this family wouldn't have necessarily they're not like a big technology family, so they actually don't have a computer. If you download this house when I upload it after the third part goes live, you're more than welcome to use that space for whatever you like. But for me, I felt like this family, they have this tiny little TV that sometimes they'll watch they'll have family nights together and watch a movie or something, but that's not their focus. Their focus is outside, and they're a crafty family. So using that little desk space over there for some knitting stuff. So I use some of the decor objects from knitting stuff. So like the little mini loom, I don't know what it's called, but I think that was really nice, and having some other crafty objects there. So it's sort of like a craft corner for a parent or even for a kid that may live in this house. So I thought that was really nice. And then just adding some decor objects around that made it feel lived in. Neat and tidy, but also cluttered. And it's kind of my favourite thing to do, which is why I decided to go with this style of home for the first build, because it kind of shows how I like to build and what I like to do when I'm decorating a home and making it feel lived in, my style and what I like. Again, it took me a little while to figure out what I wanted to do in terms of wall paintings and wall hangings. I ended up just going with some more cluttered paintings. I think I went with the set from Paranormal Stuff, like the set of this one here, the grouped pictures. And I think that looks really good and I love it, but I also change it a little bit when we change the fireplace out to something different. The light fixtures, it's really hard. I went with a bunch of different aesthetics in terms of light fixtures with this home. I decided to go with these ones from Eco Lifestyle because it kind of felt like they picked something that sort of felt a little bit more contemporary but still fit in with the theme of the house. And they've updated that, but they've kept the original wall fixtures, like the original wall lights and stuff, because they can't afford to switch them out yet. So they've kept the two types of wall lights that came in this house, but a couple of the ceiling lights, they've changed out what's the word? Just like the thing that the light that hangs around the lights. I'm blanking right now, but yeah. So I've decided to do that for a bunch of the things. So they've changed out some of those, but everything else sort of has stayed like original to the house, which is, I think, really nice, and I really like how it turned out. We've jumped into the kitchen here. I've used this base game, like sort of like a flagstone stone flooring, which I think worked really nice. It feels, again, like they've kept the original floors throughout the home, but they've just cleaned them up to make them look a bit nice. It took me a little bit also to figure out here what counters I wanted to use. I really wanted to do a nice big island, like a farmhouse island bench here, but the room was a little bit too small and I didn't like how it felt. I also really wanted to use these counters from Snowy Escape because I haven't had a chance to play with them properly yet, and this was before the country kit came out, which would have been perfect for this build, but I didn't have access to that at this point. So I decided to go with these because I wanted the idea was I wanted to go with a countertop that felt like, okay, well, they couldn't update the floors or the walls, they've just cleaned everything up and made it look nice, but they've replaced their kitchen cabinets. But they wanted something that was a little bit more contemporary but still fit in with the style of the home. I couldn't find a set of benches that worked perfectly together. I ended up going with the island living ones because I put a sink into the Snowy Escape ones that had like all the different like slots and stuff, like open shelving, but it felt weird to me, like you should be able to see the pipes, so I didn't like that. So that's why I decided to go into a more enclosed mix of cabinets. So you got some with doors, some without. Again, I wanted to go for a more rustic feel, so in here they've replaced the wallpaper and I got to use the new Paranormal Stuff wallpaper there, which is just gorgeous. But I wanted to have the original table, but they bought new chairs. And I think it turned out really nice, and I think it suited the room really well, especially once I added in a set of windows here too, so just to bring some more light and openness into the room. And I like that there's the door onto the patio from the dining room and also from the kitchen. I think it turned out really nicely. Here we are adding that here. I also wanted to place a rug underneath, and in a little bit I play around with a platform here, but I didn't like how it looked. But it took me ages to figure out a bunch of the decor for this house. A lot of it fell into place really quickly once I sort of got a feel for the way I wanted to go with the style. But a couple of rooms gave me a lot of trouble, and working out curtains was massive. We really need some new curtains. We really need some new curtains for this game, because I feel like we keep getting a lot of the same stuff. Here, I was just trying to play around with, I wanted to have floor to ceiling, floor to top of window curtains. Nothing was working because I alt placed the windows, so they're bigger than normal, which is, that's fair. They don't make necessarily curtains for the size of you placing them how you want to, which is fine. But I was trying to do sort of like a country kitchen thing. I thought if I could have something at the top of the window and then a regular curtain at the bottom, but nothing I was doing sort of looked right, and it ended up just deciding to go with not floor, like not curtains that went to the floor. Adding in a laundry here into one of the bedrooms, I think I talked about that last video. And here I am trying to figure out how to make a platform work. I thought it'd be really cool to have the table sitting up on a platform. The rugs wouldn't fit, so I got rid of it, and then I'm like, oh, maybe if I tried a different rug, but I didn't like how it looked. I tried it with just flooring, which you can see me checking there, but then I decided I didn't like how the platform ended up looking in the room anyway. And here I am adding in like a china hutch, I guess, trying a few different types to see what fits the room, and moving the table over so it's centered with the door. It's not centered to the room, but I think that's okay because of how like the cabinetry is sitting in there, and I think like all up it turned out pretty nice in the end. Took me a little while to figure out what cabinets I wanted as well. A few I'm moving and placing around into other rooms to see if I will like where they work there, but I ended up just going with the original one that I placed down. I think I liked the size and the height and how it felt in the room. The other ones felt small because of the tall wall heights. I think this particular one worked really nicely in this space. So that turned out really good. And you can see there, I was just sort of cluttering up the wall above the fireplace a little bit more too. Took me ages to figure out the foyer. This room gave me a lot of trouble. Purely because the door and the archway are not centered, and it was driving me insane, you guys. You have no idea. I ended up switching the cupboard to the other side, the walk-in cupboard to the other side, and using a rug to create the illusion that the room is centered. It turned out alright. I'm just not 100% happy with how it turned out in the end. Cluttering up above the fireplace, changing it out to the eco lifestyle one, which I really love this. It feels like it fits the vibe really well, but also adds into that sort of more contemporary feel as well. Kind of rustic, but kind of not. And I'm really happy with that choice. I think it was the perfect fireplace. I'm super happy with how the living room turned out. I love the living room. It's probably one of my favorite rooms in the whole build. And then doing my normal thing, adding clutter onto all the different shelves and just making it feel super lived in. Photo frames and plants and all those little bits and pieces that just make it feel like someone's taken all their possessions and they've lived there for a really long time, which it's what I like. Took me ages to get that how I liked it as well. I'll place a car on here, but because I'm alt placing so many things and using size down and size up and everything, things were floating and not sitting nicely, so it took me ages to sort of get everything at the right height and to get it sitting where I wanted it to sit. But it looks really good, I think. It feels like crafty and cluttered and a nice little space, a little candle there so you can smell a nice candle while you're doing your crafting stuff or your knitting. I really wanted to fit a rocking chair into that room, but I couldn't make it work. Ultimately, I just didn't have the space for it. I was also going to put one out, like on the porch or something, but again, it just didn't fit. But it would be a really great house to have a rocking chair, like your grandma sitting on the porch, knitting while watching the kids play outside. I think that'd be lovely. A lot of areas, like the rooms themselves came together well, but a lot of little areas that I didn't know what I wanted to do. So here you can see me struggling to try and fill in these corners. I guess maybe they don't need to all be filled in, and maybe that's something that I need to work on a little bit more. Not every space needs to be full, but I think that you want it to have interest, and with a house that's so cluttered, it felt wrong to leave spaces sort of untouched. Trying to make my own plants here that would work size-wise, but I delete this. It just doesn't work in the end. I end up putting another little, like a little china hutch in the corner. None of the plants, a lot of them were just too modern, too big or too modern, and it just didn't fill. Yep, that's me. Good with the words. Didn't fit with the vibe. I liked this. It felt like it could maybe be a family heirloom, this vase. Like, hey, this is something that's been passed down from generation to generation. And then using some of the seasonal decor, which I changed to green just for like a nice little centerpiece there, and adding in some flowers, which you can see here. And I just think it looked really nice. I think it felt really cozy and warm. Nice little china hutch in the corner here. Just scooching it in there to make it feel sort of like it's a part of the cabinetry, I guess. Moving the cupboard, like I said, over here. And I think that worked better, having the larger side be taken up with a little, I don't know, like a little table. When you come in the door, you can put your keys there, all of that sort of thing. Trying to figure out what paintings I want on the wall, etc., etc. And just placing a few clutter items on there, trying to fit some items that made it feel homey, but like you'd still have a spot to put your keys in your bag and all of that sort of thing. Turned out really nicely, I think. I'm happy with how it looked in terms of the items that I placed in the foyer. I'm not happy with the layout. It's one of the rooms that just, it gave me so much grief, you guys, because you can see the door is centered to the room, which I couldn't really move and make it look good from the outside. But because of where the stairs had to be, the archway isn't. Trying to place a rug down only highlighted how uneven the room was, which honestly, it shouldn't be a big deal, but it is to me. It matters and it upsets me. I ended up going with the avocado rug in here because it's awkwardly shaped. I felt like it drew the eye away from the room not being symmetrical and sort of drew you towards walking through the archway. And I think it did what it needed to do, and I'm really happy with how it ended up looking as much as I could be. I also like the fact that you look through the door in the foyer area and the table is centered in the dining room, so it flows nicely when you walk through the door. But yeah, I'm sure there are some of you out there that will see how off-center this whole room is, and it just didn't work for me. I wanted to use some of the Snowy Escape paintings, but I didn't feel like they really fit in this style of build. But I'm really looking forward to doing a build where I can maybe make that style work. Here, some of the items had moved. I mustn't have placed move objects on when I've come back into the build to continue working on it. So some of the items disappeared and I forgot about them, but I ended up putting back the ones that I wanted there initially, which is why you can sort of see. It's like, where did that come from? Well, it's because I put it there because I didn't realize that it had deleted items, but I made it work in the end. I also wanted to place something here on the wall. I couldn't find anything I liked. None of the art pieces really fit with the room, and I didn't really like any of it. But I really I love these items from Seasons, but it just didn't fit. It didn't work. But I ended up using these base game wall pieces and placing some plants in them, and I really like how it looked out. I like how it ended up looking. It felt like, I don't know, something I'd see at my grandma's house, you know? So popping these in here, sizing them down, and it felt like a weird 80s wall centerpiece sort of thing. I don't know. It's weird, I know that, but I just kind of really like how it turned out. I think it fit the room and it fit the style of build, that mix of old with more contemporary items. And you can see there that the dining room's pretty much done now. I think that worked out really well. I also wanted a little breakfast nook in here, so somewhere you could sit, just trying to line the windows up because I'm old placing them, so trying to make them match up to the right height. But the table didn't end up fitting. I just didn't like how it looked, so I cut out a lot of footage from the kitchen, by the way. A lot of it was me fiddling with items, trying to get them to go on shelves and look decent. I have included screenshots at the end of the finished kitchen, but you'll see me finish it in the next part because I jump around a lot. If I'm not feeling a room, I'll just move on to somewhere else. And sometimes that room will give me ideas to come back to the original one and finish it off. Took me a while to decide what I wanted here because I decided I didn't end up wanting that table. I thought a console table would work really nicely. And I'm really happy with how the kitchen came out. It's probably one of my other favourite rooms. I decided because I went with more modern cabinetry, which I think fit really well, but I figured because of that, like, I thought, oh, maybe they don't want upper cabinets. Maybe they don't want sort of that old farm style upper cabinet look. So they've gone with something more modern and with shelves on the walls. And I really like how it turned out. It felt, even though the wood tones don't match, I think it still worked really nicely together because the white countertops are the same. And then using a more the modern fridge and stove from Snowy Escape, and then the items, like the more farmhouse items in the shelves themselves, it gave it that vibe. It felt like, oh, they've refurbished this kitchen, it looks great, but they've still got their farmhouse aesthetic, their farmhouse style. I'm so happy with how it turned out. It's a bit weird, I know, it's not something maybe you would normally see, but I think it just meshed and gelled really well together. So I'm super, super, super happy with how it turned out. And you'll see later on too, in the screenshots, you'll see how I finish it off in the next part, but you get basically the idea in this part of how it's going to turn out. Just placing clutter here. I know it's so annoying. I don't know why I did not move those chairs so that I could see what I was doing when I was placing those items. I think I do a little bit later just for a few pieces, but I don't know what I was thinking. Seems a bit stupid, but you know, I got there in the end. But a lot of it, like I said, I cut out. You can see how much I've cut out there. Just because I was fiddling, like it was so boring and like I was so annoyed watching it back. I'm like, I can't leave this in. Trying to figure out the curtains in this room again. This whole house gave me grief. The Island Escape. Why did I call it that? The Island... Why can't I remember the name of that pack? I'm having the worst brain fog today, you guys. Anyway, the Island pack. Those curtains worked really well. They also they felt nice and pretty, but also they felt like maybe they came with the house, like these mesh curtains originally. Placing some herbs on the window, like they've sort of hung up herbs to dry from the garden. I really love how that ended up looking. And then sticking with... Oh no, I think I change out those blinds. I think I do curtains. So here, they've done the kitchen, but they've also gotten new curtains. But you'll see that in a little bit. Trying to figure out what open shelving I want on the wall. It took me a little bit to figure this out. I ended up going with more stuff from Snowy Escape, using a couple of shelves from there. Here they are now. Trying to figure out where I wanted them. I didn't like how they sit with the windows and the curtains. It felt off to me. So I spent ages doing this. That was fun. And then later on I remember, oh, guess what? I forgot to add a range hood, so it changes. So don't get too attached to it. Because of who I am as a person. You know, you guys know how it is. Just adding some more clutter here. It's a lot of really... Dine Out is not a pack I use a lot in terms of gameplay. But I tell you what, for kitchen clutter, it's premium. I love it. I use it so much for kitchen clutter. I really enjoy making walk-in pantries with them too, with shelves on the walls. I might have to do a build if you guys are interested in seeing a build, maybe with a more grand walk-in pantry sort of feel. Especially now we have these Snowy Escape cabinets. I think that could look really cool. Maybe a more modern build. But so many nice items from there. Very cluttered up the top with all these items that I feel like maybe I'll use. Some cookbooks down the bottom. I also ended up putting, for some reason, a little photo frame down there. I don't know why. I kind of feel like maybe it's they've put it there and forgotten that it's there. Chairs are in the way. There's so much clutter under there. There we go. Maybe they just don't remember that they put it there. And then just adding in some different colours to those bowls. I love those bowls from Snowy Escape. I can see myself using them so often. And I'd love more clutter like that. Kitchen clutter kit or even just a general clutter kit coming when I need it in my life. So just decorating these shelves here, although I think we moved somewhere else in a minute, so you don't really get to see a lot of that. But yeah, we're coming into the screenshots now. So thank you guys so much for being here, for watching, for caring about my content. I appreciate the heck out of each of you. And I will see you guys all in the next video. Like I said, don't forget to subscribe. Love you guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.